Hey, it's simple, you're watching Thorin channel. Shut the fuck up, you fucking bitch.
Electronic was on fire at Star Series Season 7, where Na'Vi won the title. You saw the series they played in the playoffs against Ents, one of the most difficult opponents for them. They almost lost that series 2-0. They saw the series afterwards. They played against Renegades, tactical teams. They had chances to give Na'Vi troubles. Electronic was one of the main reasons they got past these squads and were later able to win the tournament. The problem is, he didn't win the MVP award. Quite frankly, wasn't even really considered for it. Most people looked at the tournament, saw how Na'Vi had done, saw all those crazy carry games from Simple, and thought it has to be Simple, right? And by the way, I would agree with them. It did have to be Simple. So why wasn't he really considered? Why couldn't he win the MVP award? Very simply, Simple was just too good across the board in every metric. He had better stats. He carried more overall games against more opponents. He made more high-impact plays, had more memorable players. Obviously, at this particular tournament, Simple had a whole bunch of impossible players, like that 360 no-scope, or when he had to do the ridiculous 1v4 at the A site on Mirage. Bonkers shit that no one can do. So as a result, how can you then say, we'll give it to Electronic? And quite frankly, the reason I'm making this video is, if you've followed CS for a long time, buckle up, because this is probably going to be the case for Electronic for most of his career, at least while he A, plays with Simple, and or B, plays in this type of a team setup. So first of all, because he plays with Simple. Now, Simple is just too good. Simple is at such a high level, even if he had Prime Shocks or Olaf Meister or Nico next to him, they probably wouldn't be winning many MVPs either. It'd be very, very difficult for them to. Plus, you've got to add in, because Simple is so good, and as a result, effectively, one man boosts Na'Vi to becoming an elite, very dangerous team, whereas they should just be a decent to good team. Then if Simple has a bad day, Na'Vi isn't going to win many matches. They're not going to go that far. And as a result of not going far enough and winning enough matches, how's Electronic going to win the award? Even if he indeed is totally insane, but it's just him on his own. We've seen Simple on his own sometimes couldn't win tournaments in Na'Vi. How's Electronic going to do it? Now, that's not Simple's fault, by the way. That's something to point out here. It's literally him putting Na'Vi in position with superhuman play, which means that they're in any position for any of these motherfuckers to win an MVP awards. So it's not his fault that if he has a bad day, Electronic can't win. That just shows Electronic can't do what Simple can do. And therefore, does Electronic deserve the MVP award in the same context? Certainly an interesting discussion to have, right? It's actually a similar scenario as what happened in 2017 with Fur and coldzera in SK Gaming. Because what would happen was, if they went deep enough, and obviously back then you used to have to win the tournament to get most people's MVP votes. Not mine. I gave it actually to coldzera a number of times in 2016, 2017, where he didn't win the tournament, but to other people at least. Most people, you have to win the tournament to get the award, right? So if coldzera did well enough, then SK could win, and if they could win, then he would win the MVP award, and it would basically happen almost every single time. It was very rare that coldzera would do well enough or good, and SK would win the event, but someone else could have outshone coldzera. It happened, from what I remember, I think one time. I think it was ECS Season 3 that Fur won it there. I know elsewhere, Fallen and Taco and other guys won MVP awards, but some of those were fraudulent as fuck, by the way. I've made points in the past about not giving MVPs to people just to give them credit when they actually don't deserve it because they weren't the best player. But okay, we'll ignore that now. The point here is Fur, legitimately, you could make a case from at most of these tournaments that he was the MVP. He was a really, really good player. But myself, I always had to come down on the side of coldzera. And so I have to say, one factor isn't even just the frags. It's the fact that I actually feel like a player like Fur even had a stylistic disadvantage that he couldn't overcome, which is so many of his kills were early in the round. Now, if you ask me, or you ask a coach, or you ask some top pro player, they're going to be like, look at this insane impact he's having with these kills, the space he's creating, what he's doing for the team dynamic, the way he puts pressure on the map. The problem is, if you're a fan and you see Fur open the round with 2 insane entry kills and die, and then later in the round, coldzera comes in and gets 2 or 3 kills, or he wins a 1v2, what's going to be most memorable is the 1v2 or the 2 kills at the end. It's going to feel like, oh, right, he closed the round out. You know, he basically won that round for SK Gaming, now MIBR. So he was the MVP. He was the most important player in that round. Ignoring that if coldzera was just in 1v4s all day, same scenario with Zipnix, they wouldn't win the majority of them. And they would be losing most of them, and they wouldn't be having as many good games. Now, in the case of Xyp9x, he can, 'cause that's his specialty. But in the case of coldzera, he wouldn't have all those crazy frags if he was always 1v4, no matter what anyone says about him baiting, which he does do a little bit, but he's the best at it. So it's actually justified in his case, just like back with old school Get Right. So you look at it, this is actually fair, believe it or not, that Electronic won't win any MVPs. Not just because, as I said, he can't do what Simple did, but let's consider that for a second. Like, what if Electronic was on another team and he played exactly the way he did now? And as a result, they went deep in the tournament. Well, the only way we could see that happening, because he did it when he was on Flipside, but their team was way too bad, maybe if he had some of the pieces from the old Gambit team along with him, the one that won the Major and then Zeus left, maybe they would be good enough that he could get deep in tournaments. But quite frankly, he wouldn't be winning the tournament. He wouldn't really be in the MVP discussion, despite playing identically to how he plays now. Therefore, we must conclude, quite reasonably, that he benefits from being in a team with Simple. So if he benefits from being in a team with Simple, in fact, I'll go one further. Electronic benefits more from playing with Simple than Simple does from playing with Electronic. Now, if you can acknowledge that, then you'll see that because he actually is benefiting more from Simple, it's actually entirely reasonable that Simple gets the MVP award. He is the most valuable player. He is the best player in Na'Vi. And usually he's the one who's performed the best in the tournament, which is the metric that obviously should win you the award. What does Electronic get in exchange for being second fiddle, having amazing performances but not winning MVP? He wins a fucking trophy, doesn't he? Or he gets to come to the final. Or he gets to be top 4, as opposed to in Flipside where qualifying for a major was about the best you could ever hope for. Now, I know there's the whole angle of voter fatigue and how we need to give credit to the lesser players, but that has nothing to do with MVP awards. You don't need to give more credit to them in terms of giving them MVP awards because they aren't the best, they aren't the most valuable, so you're stealing from others when you do that. Now, I know some people are already going to be like, wait a minute. This isn't like when, people say Xyp9x or Glaive should have won MVP for Astralis Thorin. Come on, Electronic's a pretty sick player. No, I'm with you on that one. That's why I contrasted him with Fur and coldzera. But that was even at his peak. Electronic actually has been a pretty overrated player for the last year. The last 12 months from this date, he has been a pretty overrated player. You know why? Because in the summer, he was insane. He was fucking amazing. And actually, he was a top 5 player in the world for me. Him and Simple made up the most devastating duo at the time in the world. It was really, really impressive. But that was last summer. We've been through autumn, we've been through winter, spring's almost coming to a close soon. Come on, man. That was ages ago. And ever since, basically, off the top of my head, I think it was after the Face It Major, he's had, 2 tournaments where he got anywhere close to that form again. And one of them, from memory, was a Blast Pro Series where, you can play 7 maps in the fucking tournament or something. So that's not really that impressive overall. So he actually hasn't been the true carry that people still think of him as from when he was a beast last year or in Flipside. I actually find that kind of depressing because when I look at his skill set, especially because it's a different skill set to Simple's, although the problem is Simple can do everything. So therefore, for example, Electronic's a very good clutch player, but you're going to get overshadowed by Simple in that respect as well. And he's going to have opened the round and AWP'd and pistol. So it's I don't know how you can really overcome that. So I had hoped he would be more of a real second threat. At the moment, he's more of a sidekick at the moment in Na'Vi. I wanted it to be a real duo carry threat, like Get Right and Forest in the early days of NIP, Shocks and Scream in the very games and G2 lineups, coldzera and Fur in 2017, as I've already referenced. These are players where both were alpha dog type personalities, people who could each be the best player in the world potentially, people who could be the MVP of the game, MVP of the tournament. For Electronic, it's very rare he ever has those most of the tournaments. And even when he does, he lives in the shadow of Simple like so many other top players, not even just on his team, in the entire world. I mean, if we want to talk about people who are getting denied MVPs, for some reason, people are cooler with giving it to Electronic because his team wins the tournament, right? Why are we looking at someone else in the tournament like Nico when he's on phase, who can put up numbers way better than Electronic with consistency? Go and look elsewhere. Obviously, Device did win a lot, but only when the Astralis team was able to win the tournament. Twists had some insane stats at times last year. Sonny had occasional tournaments. But the point is, they're not Simple. And so if Simple's at that tournament and he goes God mode, he should win the MVP, whether that's his 50th MVP or his second MVP of all time. It shouldn't be about voter fatigue and other aspects. So I think Electronic can be a very, very good player. I hope in the future, he's got a few few years left, yeah, he becomes like a simple level player. That's probably unrealistic, but he still has a lot of talent. He's more in line with the Twists kind of talent skill set, so he could be very, very good. But right now, he's not an MVP, and it's rare he's going to be. This video was generously supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Butt Pounder 420, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my work? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my monthly AMA. Do you want teasers for who the guests are on my upcoming content? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.